What if the pain you've been trying to escape was the only thing that ever tried to show you who you really are? Have you ever wished to be someone who is unshakable? Someone who doesn't care about criticism, rejection, loss, or betrayal? Have you ever dreamed of the day when you would finally stop feeling that silent pain, that anguish that eats you up inside, even when you pretend to be fine on the outside? Maybe you've noticed. Some days, the act of pretending hurts more than the pain itself. Maybe you're tired of trying to please everyone, of maintaining an image that demands strength all the time, when in reality, all you wanted was to rest, just for a moment, from the pressure of being untouchable. But let me tell you something that perhaps no one has had the courage to say. As long as you try to avoid pain, it will continue to control you. As long as you try to numb yourself, to protect yourself, to hide, you will remain a hostage to everything that happens around you, to the words that hurt you, to the actions that disappoint you, to the silences that kill you inside. And this is not weakness. This is the reality for most people. The difference: some people just become masters at hiding it. Carl Jung, one of the greatest names in depth psychology, said that we are not what happens to us, but what we choose to become. And that's where the key lies. It's not about shielding yourself from the world. It's not about becoming cold, indifferent, or untouchable. It's about integrating. It's about bringing to light everything that currently affects you in the dark. Because true strength is not the absence of pain, but the full awareness of who you are, even when you are bleeding. So ask yourself, what part of you have you been hiding just to survive? Stay with us. And before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? If stories like this speak to you, subscribing. Thank you for being here. You believe that what hurts you is out there. In the actions of others, in poorly chosen words, in the abandonments you have suffered, in the betrayals you did not expect. But the truth is brutal. None of this really has the power to hurt you in a lasting way unless there is already an open wound inside you. What hurts you is not what others do to you. It is what these experiences activate within you. It is the story you tell yourself about it. It is the old trauma that has never been addressed. It is the emptiness you disguise with strength, with pride, with that desperate need to seem well-adjusted. But what if the mask you've crafted so carefully has become the very thing that's suffocating you? Jung shows us that the pain we feel in the face of the external world is merely a reflection of what has not yet been integrated into our internal world. That is why some people can go through devastating situations and still maintain clarity, while others crumble in the face of a simple comment. The weight of a word depends not on how it was said, but where it lands within you. It is not about what happens. It is about where it hits you. And here comes an uncomfortable truth. You still suffer so much because, on some level, you believe you can control how the world should treat you. You are still trying to be good enough, smart enough, strong enough, understanding enough, as if that guarantees that no one will hurt you. But control is an illusion. And as long as you cling to it, you live in constant tension, trying to predict the unpredictable, trying to avoid the inevitable. But how much peace have you already lost just by trying to avoid pain? Do you want to stop suffering? Then stop protecting yourself from suffering. What you need is not more control, but more awareness. As long as you believe that people need to change for you to stop feeling pain, you will remain enslaved by the actions of others. Your freedom begins the moment you understand that everything that comes from outside only has power if it finds an echo within you. And this is exactly where the true battlefield lies: the unconscious. What you do not see, do not understand, and do not master, masters you. And in that invisible arena, every unhealed part of you becomes a liability. And this is what we will explore in the next part. Get ready to dive one level deeper, because that is where true transformation begins. Perhaps the real tragedy isn't that life is unpredictable, but that we're strangers to ourselves in the middle of it. The biggest lie you've been told is that you are in control of your life. Wake up, because you're not. At least not as long as you continue living on autopilot, reacting without knowing why, feeling without understanding where it comes from, making decisions that you later sabotage. Carl Jung made this clear when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And that is exactly what is happening to you right now. The pain you feel, the anger that explodes out of nowhere, the sadness that invades you without explanation. None of this is random. They are messages coming from parts of you that have been forgotten, ignored, repressed. Jung referred to this dark territory as the unconscious. And it is not just a cloud of vague thoughts. It is an active force, an entire system of memories, trauma, desires, and fears that you do not want to face. But that continue to decide what you feel and how you act. You wonder why certain words destroy you while other people don't care. Because those words touch sensitive points within you that are still alive. And if they are alive, it is because you have never confronted them. You have only pushed them under the psychological rug, and now you keep tripping over them. Jung said we cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate. It oppresses. And what have you been doing all this time? Judging yourself, repressing yourself, silencing yourself, as if that would solve anything. The truth is, the unconscious does not disappear just because you choose to ignore it. It only finds more subtle, more dangerous ways to express itself. Through toxic relationships you keep repeating, in patterns of self-sabotage you can't seem to escape, in anxieties and fears that show up precisely when things start to go well. Isn't it strange how pain finds you exactly when you're starting to feel safe again? This is not bad luck. It is your unconscious trying to wake you up. But you insist on sleeping. You want to be someone who is no longer hurt. Then stop running away from what lives inside you. Because as long as you remain unaware of your unconscious, you will continue to be a puppet of your emotions. And the more you try to protect yourself from external pain, the more vulnerable you become to the pain within. But there is a way out. And it does not come from defending yourself. It comes from integrating yourself. Becoming untouchable is not an act of resistance. It is an act of recognition. It is the quiet but firm decision to stop being at war with parts of yourself. This is what we will explore next. What does it really mean to be unshaken? Why does real strength not come from armor, but from acceptance? Most people believe the only way to avoid getting hurt is by closing themselves off. They build walls, they wear masks, they develop emotional armor, and they convince themselves that nothing gets to them. I don't care anymore. I've moved on. I'm over it. But beneath that shell, they're still bleeding. They're still shrinking. The pain never left. It just changed rooms. Because the real issue was never about feeling. It was about not understanding what you were feeling, or why. And that kind of confusion only exists in those who haven't yet looked inward. Jung was precise when he wrote, "Know all the theories, master all the techniques. But when touching a human soul, be just another human soul." And that hidden soul inside you, the one you've locked behind strength, control, and invulnerability, it is not weak. It is simply asking to be seen. Becoming emotionally strong has nothing to do with being cold. It has nothing to do with pretending pain doesn't exist. It has everything to do with integration. With bringing to light the emotions you buried long ago and realizing that no part of you needs to be feared or rejected. Have you ever pretended not to care, just because you didn't know how to explain the hurt? Drop a 1 if yes, 0 if no. You do not become untouchable by building a wall between yourself and the world. You become untouchable when you understand that no one can touch what you've already made peace with inside. When you've met your own shadows, your fears, your flaws, your insecurities, you stop being reactive. You observe, you choose, you begin to respond from clarity, not wound. Jung called this process individuation, the act of becoming who you really are. Not what others expect, not what society rewards, not what you believed you needed to be to feel loved, but who you are at the intersection between your ego and your unconscious, between the light and the dark. Individuation is not about perfection. Jung said it plainly, it is about integration. You don't need to become a better version of yourself, you need to become whole. And maybe that's the greatest shift of all. Not becoming someone new, but finally allowing yourself to be fully human. And here's the truth, no one tells you. The more you run from pain, the more it follows. The more you try not to be affected, the more fragile. But when you face your own wounds, when you accept who you are, with all that is beautiful and ugly, noble and shameful, nothing outside has the power to dismantle you. However, this path requires courage. Courage to look within. Courage to abandon the masks. Courage to feel. Because it is precisely in pain that the key to transformation is hidden. And that is what we begin to uncover next, how suffering, far from being an enemy, can become the very gateway to your true strength. And maybe the question we've been avoiding is the one that frees us. What if pain was never here to punish, but to initiate? Let's dive deeper, and this time without fear. You learned to hate pain since you were little. You were taught that suffering is a sign of weakness, that crying is a waste of time. That feeling too much makes you vulnerable, and so you began to run, to avoid, to deny. But the more you flee from suffering, the more it chases you. And the worst part, it changes form. It disguises itself as anxiety, as anger, as apathy, boredom, self-destructive impulses that seem to come from nowhere. Ignored pain does not disappear. It just digs tunnels inside you, until one day, without warning, everything collapses. Jung saw suffering in a completely different way. He believed that pain was the messenger of the soul, the alarm of the unconscious, the language that the self, what you are in your entirety, uses to get your attention. He said, depression is like a lady in black. If she appears, don't push her away. Invite her to sit down, offer her a coffee, and listen to what she has to say. But you don't listen. You silence yourself, distract yourself, keep yourself busy, numb yourself. You do everything to avoid looking at what really matters. But what if the very thing you keep avoiding holds the truth you've been searching for? What is this pain trying to show you? The truth is, suffering only hurts so much because you are still at war with yourself. There is still a part of you wanting to grow, and another part wanting to keep everything exactly as it is. There is something inside you that cries out for transformation. But your ego, so accustomed to control, tries to suffocate that call. And it is in this friction that pain is born. Because change hurts. Growth hurts. Letting go of old beliefs hurts. Cutting toxic ties hurts. Allowing what no longer serves you to die. All of it is a mourning. An internal process of death and rebirth. But it is precisely in this space of ruin that something new can be born. Because when everything in you is deconstructed, when certainties crumble, when pain lays bare your deepest vulnerability, you can finally see who you truly are. Without the layers of protection, without the performance, without the mask. And at that exact point, suffering becomes sacred. Because it brings you to your knees before the only thing that can set you free, yourself. Jung knew this. He understood that suffering is not a failure of the system. It is part of the process. Pain is not the end of the road. It is the beginning of the journey toward individuation. The problem is, most people give up before crossing that dark valley. They flee. They distract themselves. They return to the surface. But you're still here. And maybe that means you're not looking for comfort. Maybe you're ready for the truth. If you've made it this far, it's because you're ready to cross. And in the next part, we will understand how this crossing process happens. How the path of individuation, no matter how lonely or brutal it may seem, is what finally sets you free. It's getting deeper now. Few people have the courage to begin the journey of individuation, and even fewer have the courage to complete it. Because this path does not promise comfort, it does not offer guarantees, it does not protect your ego, it destroys it. Jung referred to individuation as a process of becoming who you are, but this means, above all, unlearning what you think you are. And that hurts more than any external rejection, because you start to realize that much of what defined you until now was an illusion. You are not your achievements. You are not your traumas. You are not the image you constructed to be loved, respected, or admired. All of this was what you created to survive. But ask yourself, have you mistaken survival for identity? Because surviving is not living. And individuation is life's call beyond survival. It is when the unconscious begins to push everything that has been repressed, hidden, and distorted to the surface. Individuation requires the dissolution of the persona, Jung wrote, for it is merely a mask of collective convenience. In other words, you will need to tear off your own skin to discover what lies beneath. And it is in this process that you begin to become untouchable. Not because nothing affects you anymore, but because you have already gone through the fire. You have faced your monsters. You have looked into the eyes of your shame, your neediness, your anger, and said, "I see you." And you no longer control me. It is this internal clarity, this lucidity in the face of your own darkness, that gives you a strength that does not depend on approval, recognition, or control. You no longer need to be loved by everyone. You no longer need to win every argument. You no longer need to appear strong. Because your strength is no longer performative. It is rooted. You know who you are, and no one can take that away from you. True emotional armor is not a shell, it is a core. It is the integration of all your parts into a center of consciousness that remains unshaken in the face of storms. You may feel pain, but it does not break you. You may be hurt, but you do not lose yourself. Because you have stopped being reactive and you have become whole, you have stopped living on the surface and have begun to inhabit the depths. Have you ever felt like you outgrew a place but couldn't explain why? Share your yes or no below. However, this depth comes at a price. Loneliness, not because you will be alone, but because few people can accompany you on this journey. Most are still trapped on the surface, in masks, in fear, in the illusion of control, and when you begin to free yourself, you inevitably distance yourself. But this distancing is not rejection. It is maturation. You do not distance yourself out of pride. You distance yourself because you no longer fit where you once hid. Because the self you've become cannot be compressed into who you used to be. And this brings us to the final point of this journey. Consciousness as a shield. Because it is not strength that protects you, it is clarity. This is what we will explore in the final part. Consciousness as the only state in which absolutely nothing holds power over you. Let us complete this crossing together. We are almost there. Now that you have made it this far, something must be said with unwavering honesty. Nothing, absolutely nothing, will shield you from external suffering if you remain unconscious of what takes place within. The words will still cut. The rejections will still sting. The losses will still break you until you awaken. But awakening is not some grand spiritual event. It is not lightning from the sky or a sudden miracle. It is a daily decision, a quiet, repeated commitment. It is the act of looking within, even when it burns. It is choosing to take responsibility for everything you feel, without blaming others, without clinging to your past, without hiding behind fate. Carl Jung once wrote, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." You have spent your life resisting the fear of not being enough, resisting the emptiness of rejection, resisting the pain of loneliness, resisting the ache of being unseen. And in response, you tried to control everything. You silenced your truth, you performed strength, you painted perfection over the cracks, but none of that healed you. It only exhausted you. And now, here you are, tired of fighting the world, but even more tired of fighting yourself. At last, you understand. Emotional immunity is not born from armor, but from clarity. It is not about becoming hard. It is about becoming aware. Because when you understand your triggers, your patterns, your wounds, when you bring them out of the shadows into the light, they lose their power to control you. You no longer react from pain, but respond from presence. And in that presence, something quiet but profound begins to shift. You begin to live from the inside out. You stop needing to prove yourself. You stop trying to fix everyone so you can finally feel safe. You stop confusing your identity with your suffering. You no longer chase love as validation. You feel your pain, but it does not own you. You fall, but you no longer collapse. You are able to witness your own heartbreak and still remain whole. This is not because life has become easier. It has not. The losses still come. The disappointments still arrive. But you meet them differently. You no longer crumble because you no longer pretend. You feel deeply, but you are no longer swept away. And perhaps for the first time, you are finally living without the mask. Clarity gives you this. It lets you breathe without escaping. It lets you grieve without collapsing. It lets you speak without begging to be heard. It teaches you that stillness is not emptiness, and silence is not weakness. And maybe that has been the point all along. Not becoming someone new, but remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. You return to your own presence. No longer performing, no longer over-explaining, no longer chasing spaces that were never meant to hold you. And in that space, you begin to heal. Not perfectly, not all at once, but truly, with fewer apologies, with fewer negotiations, with more truth, more calm, more depth. Because once you see clearly, no one, not even your own doubt, can unsee what you now understand. That peace is not the absence of pain. It is the presence of self. So let me ask you, have you ever mistaken survival for identity? Have you ever confused being accepted with being loved? Have you ever let someone else's voice become louder than your own? And if you have, what would it mean to begin again? Not with noise, but with clarity. If these words resonated, share your story below. Tell us when you first realized that clarity was more powerful than control. Or simply write the words, "I choose clarity." Like this message if it spoke to something real in you. Share it with someone who may be walking through their own storm. And subscribe for more spaces like this, where we do not hide from ourselves. Thank you for being here. Until next time, stay awake, stay soft, stay honest.